Marcus Williams never expected that playing piano in a hotel lobby at midnight would change to lives forever. What started as a desperate attempt to calm his nerves before the biggest job interview of his life became the moment when a stranger's whispered words would reveal a connection that defied all odds. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The fluorescent lights of the Grandview Hotel lobby cast harsh shadows across the polished marble floor as Marcus adjusted his tie for the 100th time that evening. His hands trembled slightly, not from the late hour, but from the weight of tomorrow morning's interview. Senior financial analyst at Peterson and Associates. The kind of position that could finally provide the stability his 8-year-old daughter, Emma, desperately needed. He glanced at his phone. 11:47 p.m. Room 314 felt too small, too suffocating for the anxiety coursing through his veins. Emma was fast asleep, exhausted from their cross-country drive from Phoenix to Chicago. 3 days in a cramped Honda Civic with a curious second grader asking, "Are we there yet?" every 30 minutes. But they'd made it, and tomorrow would determine whether this leap of faith would pay off or leave them scrambling back to square one. The hotel lobby stretched before him, nearly empty, except for a night clerk who looked half asleep behind the reception desk. In the far corner, a black baby grand piano sat beneath a crystal chandelier, its ebony surface reflecting the ambient lighting like still water. Marcus had noticed it when they checked in, but now, with his mind racing and sleep impossible, it called to him. He hadn't played in months, not since selling his upright piano to cover Emma's medical bills after her bout with pneumonia last winter. The memory of watching the buyers loaded onto their truck still stung another piece of his former life disappearing into someone else's reality. Marcus approached the piano cautiously, as if it might vanish if he moved too quickly. His fingers traced the smooth keys without pressing down, muscle memory awakening after months of dormancy. The night clerk glanced up briefly, then returned to whatever was holding his attention on the computer screen. Taking a deep breath, Marcus settled onto the bench and let his fingers find middle C. The sound rang clear and true in the vast lobby space, somehow both intimate and grand. He began with scales, working through the familiar patterns that had been his meditation since childhood. His father had insisted on piano lessons when Marcus was 7, despite their family's tight budget. "Music feeds the soul when everything else fails," his father had said. Those words carried more weight now than they ever had. As his fingers warmed up, muscle memory took over. Without conscious thought, he found himself playing Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. The melody flowed from his hands like water finding its way downhill, each note carrying years of practice, years of finding solace in the mathematics of music. When the chaos of life became too much to bear, the divorce had been finalized 8 months ago. Sandra had made it clear that she couldn't handle the uncertainty anymore, the freelance consulting work that sometimes paid well and sometimes didn't, the constant moving from one temporary situation to another, the dreams that seemed to shift. With every economic downturn, she wanted stability, predictability. A man who came home at the same time every day with a steady paycheck and a clear path forward. Marcus couldn't blame her. He'd wanted those things too. But somewhere between his business degree and the reality of providing for a family, the steady corporate job had remained just out of reach. There was always someone more qualified, someone with more experience, someone who fit the company culture better. The rejection letters had piled up until he'd stopped applying, instead piecing together a living through consulting gigs and part-time work that kept them afloat but never quite secure. The chop and piece drew to its gentle conclusion, and Marcus paused, his hands resting on the keys. The silence that followed felt different, somehow empty, but full of possibility. Tomorrow's interview was with a company that had actually reached out to him, impressed by a financial analysis he'd done for a mutual contact. They wanted to meet him, wanted to hear his ideas about market trends and investment strategies. For the first time in years, someone was seeking his expertise rather than dismissing his unconventional career path. Emma had been so excited about the move. "Are we going to live in a real city, Daddy? The tall buildings and museums?" Her enthusiasm had been infectious. even as Marcus worried about uprooting her from the only home she'd ever known. But Phoenix held too many memories of failure, too many dead ends and false starts. Chicago represented a fresh beginning, a chance to build something lasting. He began playing again, this time letting his hands wander without a specific piece in mind. Fragments of melodies he'd composed years ago mixed with classical pieces and jazz standards, creating something entirely new in the moment. This was how he'd always processed stress, through the language of music that made sense when words failed him. The lobby's atmosphere seemed to shift as he played. The harsh fluorescent lighting felt softer somehow, the marble surfaces warmer. Even the night clerk had looked up from his screen, listening with what appeared to be genuine interest rather than annoyance at the late night. Disturbance. Marcus thought about Emma sleeping upstairs, probably dreaming about the new school she'd start next week if everything went according to plan. She'd been so brave about leaving her friends in Phoenix, trusting her father's promise that this move would make their lives better. That trust was both a gift and a burden, knowing that someone depended on him completely, that his decisions shaped not just his own future, but hers as well. The melody under his fingers turned melancholy, reflecting the weight of single parenthood that never fully lifted from his shoulders. There were moments like when Emma got sick and he had to choose between taking her to the doctor and losing a day's pay from a consulting project. When the responsibility felt crushing, their parents had backup, had partners to share the load. Marcus had learned to be both mother and father, breadwinner and caregiver, disciplinarian and comforter. But there were also moments of pure joy that he wouldn't trade for anything. Emma's laugh when he made pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. It's a way she'd curl up next to him on the couch for their weekly movie night, and her small hand finding his during the scary parts. The pride in her voice when she told people, "My daddy plays." Beautiful music even when he hadn't touched a piano in weeks. Music had been there constant through all the upheaval. Even when they'd sold the piano, Marcus would hum melodies while they cooked dinner together, would tap out rhythms on the steering wheel during long car rides. Emma had inherited his ear for music, often singing along with perfect pitch to songs. On the radio, maybe someday when things were stable, he could get her lessons of her own. The piece he was improvising took on a more hopeful tone as these thoughts crossed his mind. The interview tomorrow wasn't just about landing a job, it was about proving to himself that he could provide the life Emma deserved. A real home instead of temporary apartments, piano lessons and summer camps and all the things other kids took for granted. Peterson and Associates had been founded by a woman who'd built her firm from nothing. Someone who understood that talent didn't always come in traditional packages. During their phone conversation, Sarah Peterson had seemed genuinely interested in his unconventional background, his experience working with diverse clients and adapting to different industries. Sometimes the best analysts are the ones who've seen business from multiple angles. She'd said, Marcus allowed himself to imagine what success might look like. Emma in a stable school with friends she wouldn't have to leave behind. Weekend trips to museums and concerts, exposing her to all the culture Chicago had to offer. Maybe even enough financial security to think about buying a house, creating a space that was truly theirs. The music flowed from his fingers with increasing confidence, each note a small act of faith in the future. He was so absorbed in the playing that he almost missed the soft footsteps approaching across the marble floor. Almost missed the figure settling into one of the lobby's leather armchairs, just close enough to listen without intruding. When he finally became aware of his audience, Marcus's hands stilled for a moment. A woman sat in the shadows at the edge of the chandelier's glow. Her face partially obscured, but her posture suggesting deep attention rather than casual interest. She was dressed in a simple black dress that spoke of understated elegance. Her graying hair pulled back in a way that suggested both practicality and refinement. For a moment their eyes met across the space between piano and chair. She nodded slightly, not a request to continue, but an acknowledgement of the music's power to create connection between strangers. Marcus found himself smiling slightly and returning his attention to the keys. This time he played with greater intentionality, aware that his music was reaching someone who understood its language. The piece that emerged was neither classical nor contemporary, but something uniquely his OAAM musical autobiography that spoke of struggle and hope, of love for a child, and the determination to build something better. As the last notes faded into the lobby's vast space, the woman remained still for a long moment. Then she rose from her chair and walked slowly toward the piano, her steps echoing softly against the marble. Marcus watched her approach, curious but not apprehensive. There was something about her presence that suggested kindness rather than criticism. She stopped a few feet from the piano bench, close enough for conversation, but far enough to maintain respectful distance. When she spoke, her voice carried the slight rasp of someone who'd lived through both joy and sorrow. "You played that song on my hardest night?" Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. The woman's words hung in the air between them like a bridge neither of them had expected to cross. Her eyes held a depth of recognition that went beyond the music he'd just played as if she'd heard not just the notes, but the story behind them. "I'm sorry," Marcus said quietly, his hand still resting on the keys. "I don't understand." The woman moved closer, her fingers trailing along the piano's curved edge. In the chandelier's light, he could see her face more clearly now. She appeared to be in her early 60s, with intelligent hazel eyes and the kind of composed bearing that spoke of someone accustomed to command. But there was something vulnerable in her expression, a crack in what was otherwise perfect composure. "May I sit?" she asked, gesturing toward the space beside him on the piano bench. Marcus slid over, making room. She settled beside him with practiced grace, her hands folding in her lap. This close, he caught a hint of expensive perfume mixed with something else, coffee, perhaps, and the faint medicinal smell of hospitals. "My name is Catherine Brennan," she said. "And 3 years ago, on December 14th, I heard that exact melody coming from the children's ward at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story." The date meant nothing to Marcus, but something in her tone made him lean forward slightly. The children's ward. Catherine's gaze moved to the piano keys, her fingers ghosting over them without making sound. "My grandson Tyler was dying, leukemia. We'd been fighting it for 2 years, through every treatment the doctors could think of. But that night..." She paused, her voice catching slightly. "That night they told us there was nothing more they could do." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He wanted to speak, to offer comfort, but something told him to wait, to let her story unfold in its own time. "Tyler was only 6 years old," Catherine continued. "He loved music more than anything else in the world, could play chopsticks on his little keyboard and would sing along to every song on the radio, even when the chemo made him so weak he could barely lift his head." She smiled then, but it was edged with pain. "The nurses called him their little songbird." The lobby seemed to grow quieter around them, as if the building itself was listening. Even the night clerk had stopped typing, though he was pretending not to eavesdrop. On that last night, Tyler couldn't sleep. He was in so much pain, and the medications weren't helping anymore. My daughter Rachel was beside herself. She hadn't slept in days, hadn't eaten a real meal in weeks. We were all falling apart, watching this beautiful little boy slip away from us. Catherine's hands trembled slightly, and she pressed them together to still them. Around midnight, music started drifting down the hospital corridors. Someone was playing piano in the family lounge, the same melody you just played. Tyler heard it first, his eyes opened wider than they'd been in days, and he asked me to wheel his IV stand closer to the door so he could listen better. Marcus felt his chest tighten. He remembered that night now, remembered the stark fluorescent lighting of Northwestern Memorial's family lounge. The uncomfortable chairs, the desperation that had driven him to find the old upright piano tucked in the corner. Emma had been recovering from her pneumonia, finally stable enough that he could step away from her bedside for a few minutes. "You were there?" he whispered. Catherine nodded, tears gathering in her eyes. "I followed the music, found a man sitting at that beaten-up piano, playing like his life depended on it. You never saw Mia stayed in the hallway, not wanting to interrupt?" But Tyler could hear it from his room, and for the first time in weeks, he wasn't crying. The memory came flooding back with startling clarity. Marcus had been terrified that night, watching Emma struggle to breathe, seeing her small body dwarfed by the hospital bed and machinery. The doctors had assured him she would recover, but after Sandra left, taking with her the illusion that life came with guarantees, he'd learned to fear the worst while hoping for the best. I played for hours, Marcus said, the words coming out, rough with emotion. I couldn't sleep, couldn't think about anything except ... your daughter, Catherine finished. I saw her the next morning when I was getting coffee. Beautiful little girl with your eyes, and the most serious expression I'd ever seen on someone so young. She was sitting in your lap in the cafeteria, still pale but clearly on the mend. Marcus stared at her, amazed by the impossible coincidence that had brought them together in this lobby 3 years later. Emma. Her name is Emma. Tyler asked me about the music that night, Catherine continued. He wanted to know who was playing, why it sounded so sad but also so hopeful at the same time. I told him it was someone who understood what love felt, like real love, the kind that makes you fight even when you're scared. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He'd never thought of his late-night playing as anything more than a way to process his own anxiety, but hearing it described through the eyes of a dying child changed everything. He fell asleep while you were playing, Catherine said softly. Peaceful sleep, the first he'd had in days. And when he woke up in the morning, he asked the nurses if the piano man would come back. They didn't know who he was talking about, but Tyler insisted he would return because people who play like that always come back to help. Marcus felt tears threatening and blinked them. Did he... double quotes, he died 2 days later, Catherine said simply. But those last 2 days were different. He wasn't afraid anymore. He kept humming your melody, making up words about brave knights and magical forests. Rachel said it was like having the real Tyler back, even if only for a little while. The silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of shared grief and unexpected connection. Marcus thought about Emma sleeping upstairs, healthy and whole, and felt a surge of gratitude, mixed with survivor's guilt. I've been looking for you ever since, Catherine said. Not actively, but ... hoping. I knew you had to be local because your daughter was a patient there. I asked around, but no one knew who the mysterious piano player was. Eventually I thought, maybe it was better to let it remain a mystery. What changed? Marcus asked. Catherine smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. I heard you playing tonight, and it was unmistakably the same style, the same emotional signature. But more than that, you played Tyler's song? Tyler's song? The melody he was humming those last 2 days, you never heard it complete, just fragments drifting down the hospital hallway. But somehow, you played it tonight exactly as he used to. It note for note. Marcus felt goosebumps rise on his arms. I was improvising. I don't remember playing any specific piece. Maybe music has its own memory, Catherine said. Maybe some melodies exist in the space between hearts, waiting for the right moment to be shared. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small device, a digital recorder, the kind journalists used. I recorded him humming it on his last day. Rachel and I listen to it sometimes, when we miss him too much to bear. She hesitated then, extended the recorder toward Marcus. Would you like to hear it? Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. Catherine pressed play, and a child's voice filled the lobby, thin and weak, but unmistakably joyful. Humming a melody that was indeed identical to what Marcus had played minutes earlier, the recording lasted less than 30 seconds. But it contained an entire universe of innocence and hope. When it ended, both adults sat in silence, processing the impossible coincidence that had brought them together. He would have loved knowing that you're here, Catherine said finally. That the piano man kept playing, kept helping people even when he didn't know it. Marcus looked at her, seeing past the expensive clothes and composed demeanor to the grandmother who'd lost everything that mattered most. You said you were looking for me. Why? Catherine's expression grew thoughtful. I run a foundation, the Tyler Brennan Foundation for Children's Music Therapy. We provide instruments and music programs for pediatric hospitals across the Midwest. But we've been missing something crucial, someone who understands that music isn't just entertainment, it's healing. She paused, studying Marcus's face. No, this might sound presumptuous, given that we've just met, but I've been searching for a music director, Someone who could oversee our hospital programs, train volunteers, maybe even perform themselves when situations call for it. Marcus felt his world tilt slightly. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a purpose, Catherine corrected. Position comes with a substantial salary, full benefits, and the opportunity to do what you were doing that night at Northwestern, bringing comfort to families in their darkest moments. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd come to Chicago for a traditional corporate job that would provide stability, only to be offered something that might provide meaning as well. I have an interview tomorrow morning, Peterson and Associates. Catherine nodded knowingly. Sarah Peterson. She's on our board of directors. Brilliant woman, built her company from nothing after losing her own child to cancer 15 years ago. She's actually the one who recommended we expand our music therapy programs. Marcus stared at her, another piece of the impossible puzzle. Clicking into place, she knows about this, about your foundation. Sarah believes that business should serve humanity, not the other way around. Half her firm's profits go to charitable causes, mostly related to children's health and welfare. If you take the position with Peterson and Associates, you'd likely be working on accounts that align with those values. The conversation was moving too fast, presenting possibilities Marcus hadn't dared to imagine. This is all very sudden. I'm honored by your offer, but I came here for stability, for a predictable future for my daughter. What if I told you that stability and purpose don't have to be mutually exclusive? Catherine asked. The foundation position is permanent, with room for growth. We're expanding to new hospitals every year, and we need someone with both musical talent and business acumen to help us scale effectively. She reached into her purse again, this time producing a business card. I don't need an answer tonight, but I hope you'll consider it. Tyler believed that people who play like you always come back to help. Maybe this is how you come back. Marcus took the card, running his thumb over the embossed letters. Catherine Brennan, Executive Director, Tyler Brennan Foundation. Below, that, a simple tagline, Music Heals. There's something else, Catherine said, her voice growing softer. The foundation maintains a studio space in downtown Chicago with several pianos, including a concert grand. It's available to our staff, 24 hours a day. I have a feeling someone who plays at midnight in hotel lobbies might appreciate having access to real instruments. The offer was almost too good to be true, which made Marcus cautious. Why me? You heard me play for maybe 30 minutes 3 years ago. If you don't know anything about my qualifications, my work history, my ability to manage programs or work with medical staff, Catherine smiled. I know you're a single father who drove across the country for a job interview, which tells me you're dedicated to providing for your family. I know you play piano at midnight when you can't sleep, which tells me music is how you process the world, and I know that your improvised melody gave a dying child 2 days of peace, which tells me everything else I need to know about your character. She stood up from the piano bench, smoothing her dress. The interview with Sarah tomorrow will go well. I can't guarantee she'll offer you the position, but I can guarantee she'll be impressed by someone who combines financial acumen with genuine compassion. Marcus stood as well, still holding her business card. If I were to consider your offer, I'm not saying I am, what would it look like day to day? Visits to hospitals, training sessions with volunteers, administrative work to keep programs running smoothly. Some travel, but mostly regional, performing when the situation calls. For it, though, that would be your choice, not a requirement. She paused at the edge of the chandelier's light, her face half in shadow. There's one more thing Tyler said during those last 2 days. He told Rachel that the piano man would find his way back to helping people, but first he had to help himself. Maybe tomorrow's interview is step 1, and maybe this conversation is step 2. With that, Catherine Brennan walked across the marble lobby toward the elevators, leaving Marcus alone with the piano and a business card that felt like it might change everything. He sat back down at the bench and played a few quiet notes, thinking about impossible coincidences and the way music could create bridges between strangers. Somewhere upstairs, Emma was sleeping peacefully, trusting that her father would find a way to build them a better life. For the first time since arriving in Chicago, Marcus felt like maybe, just maybe, he was exactly where he was supposed to be, The alarm clock's shrill cry pierced through Marcus's restless sleep at 6:30 a.m. He'd managed maybe 3 hours of actual rest, his mind churning through every detail of his midnight encounter with Catherine Brennan. Her business card sat on the nightstand. Catching the morning light filtering through the hotel room's heavy curtains, Emma stirred in the bed beside him, her small form creating barely a ripple under the covers. She'd insisted on sharing the king-size bed rather than taking the rollaway, claiming she always slept better when she could hear his breathing. Now, 8 years old, she still occasionally crawled into his bed after nightmares, seeking the comfort of his presence. "Morning, sleepyhead," Marcus whispered as Emma's eyes fluttered open. She stretched like a cat, then immediately sat up, with the alertness that only children possessed. "Is today the big day? The important meeting?" "It is." Marcus ruffled her already messy hair. "But first, how about we explore Chicago a little? I saw a pancake place across the street that looked promising." Emma's face lit up. "Can we get chocolate chip pancakes? And maybe see some tall buildings?" The normalcy of her excitement grounded him. Whatever happened in the next few hours, Emma would be fed, entertained, and loved. That had to be enough, regardless of which direction his career took. An hour later, they sat in Maggie's diner across from the hotel, Emma systematically arranging her chocolate chips into smiley faces before eating each pancake. Marcus nursed his coffee and watched pedestrians hurry past the window, men and women in sharp suits, carrying briefcases and purpose, the kind of people he'd soon be interviewing to join. "Daddy, you're being quiet," Emma observed between bites. "Just thinking about the meeting. Are you nervous?" Marcus considered lying, offering the kind of reassuring platitudes adults typically fed children. But Emma had lived through enough upheaval to deserve honesty. "A little. This job could change a lot of things for us. Good changes or bad changes. Hopefully good. It would mean we could stay in Chicago, find a nice apartment, maybe get you enrolled in a school with a good music program." Emma's eyes widened. "They have music at school here?" "Some of them do. And there are other places to learn music too. Museums, concert halls, maybe even private lessons if things work out." She considered this with the seriousness of someone much older. One mishearing. "You play piano?" Not just humming or tapping, but real piano. The words hit him unexpectedly. He'd been so focused on providing basic necessities that he'd forgotten how much Emma had loved their evening concerts back when they'd owned the upright. She would sit cross-legged on the floor beside the bench, sometimes singing along, sometimes just listening with the absorbed attention of a natural musician. "Maybe we'll get another piano someday," he said. "Promise? I promise I'll try." That seemed to satisfy her. She finished her pancakes with renewed enthusiasm, then insisted on walking the 6 blocks to Peterson and Associates rather than taking a taxi. Chicago's downtown energy was infectious, the mixture of architectural grandeur and human ambition creating a symphony of possibility. Peterson and Associates occupied the 15th floor of a gleaming office tower, its lobby all marble and glass with the kind of understated elegance that spoke of serious money. Marcus had arranged for Emma to spend the morning at a nearby children's museum, but she wanted to see where he might be working. "It's very fancy," she whispered as they rode the elevator up. "It is," Marcus agreed, straightening his tie one final time. The receptionist, a young man with an easy smile, directed them to a waiting area furnished with leather chairs and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Emma pressed her nose to the glass, counting floors in the building across the street. "Mr. Williams." A woman's voice drew his attention. "I'm Sarah Peterson." Marcus stood, extending his hand to shake hers. Sarah Peterson was younger than he'd expected, perhaps mid-40s, with silver-streaked brown hair and the kind of direct gaze that suggested she didn't waste time on small talk. She wore a navy suit that was clearly expensive but not flashy, and when she smiled, it reached her eyes. "And this must be Emma," Sarah said, crouching to the child's level. "Oh, I hear you're exploring Chicago today." Emma nodded shyly. "We're staying at a hotel with a piano in the lobby. Addie played it last night." Something flickered across Sarah's expression, surprise, perhaps, or recognition. "He did? What did he play?" "I don't know the name, but it was beautiful. It made me think of stars and forests and ... magic." Sarah's smile widened. "Music often does that. Are you musical too, Emma?" I can sing, and I know some songs on the keyboard. But I want to learn real piano like Daddy. Maybe Chicago will be a good place for that, Sarah said, standing. Looked at Marcus. Ready for our conversation? He kissed Emma's forehead. I'll be back in an hour. Be good for Ms. Peterson's assistant. Sarah's office was smaller than Marcus had expected, but filled with natural light and carefully chosen artwork. Instead of the typical corporate power setup, she'd arranged 2 comfortable chairs facing each other with a small table between them. Coffee was already waiting. I have to confess something, Sarah said as they settled into their chairs. Know more about you than what's in your resume. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. Catherine Brennan called me this morning. She told me about your encounter last night. The revelation shouldn't have surprised him. Catherine had mentioned that. Sarah was on the foundation's board, but it still felt like walking into a conversation, where everyone else knew the script. She offered me a position, Marcus said carefully. I told her I'd think about it. And what are you thinking? Marcus chose his words carefully. I'm thinking it's an incredible opportunity to do meaningful work. I'm also thinking I came here for stability, for a traditional career path that would give my daughter the security she deserves. Sarah nodded. Traditional security. I understand the appeal. I spent the first 10 years of my career climbing the corporate ladder at a multinational firm, convinced that following the prescribed path was the only way to succeed. She paused, her gaze moving to a framed photo on her desk, a young boy with Sarah's eyes and an infectious grin. That was before I lost my son Michael to pediatric cancer, before I realized that traditional success means nothing if you're not using your talents to make the world better. Marcus felt the familiar pang of recognition that came with meeting another parent who'd faced their worst fears. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. It's what led me to start this firm, to focus on work that matters. We do financial analysis and strategic planning, but primarily for organizations that are trying to solve real problems. Nonprofits, medical research facilities, educational institutions. She leaned forward slightly. The position we discussed on the phone would involve exactly that kind of work. You'd be analyzing funding patterns for charitable organizations, helping them optimize their financial strategies, working with foundations to ensure their grant money is being used effectively, including the Tyler Brennan Foundation, among others. We handled the financial oversight for about 24 nonprofits focused on children's health and welfare. It's challenging work that requires both analytical skills and emotional intelligence. Marcus found himself genuinely intrigued. No, 2 days are the same. You might spend morning reviewing grant applications, afternoon meeting with foundation directors to discuss funding strategies, evening attending a fundraising event to better understand our clients' work. Sarah smiled. It's not the kind of predictable routine that some people prefer, but it's never boring. And the compensation, competitive with any major financial firm, plus comprehensive benefits and performance bonuses. We believe in paying well for good work. She named a figure that was higher than Marcus had dared hope for. There's something else you should know, Sarah continued. We encourage our employees to pursue complementary interests. If you were to take the foundation position as well, we'd structure your schedule to accommodate both roles. Think of it as a consulting arrangement where you'd work with us 3 days a week and the foundation 2 days. Marcus stared at her. You're suggesting I could do both jobs? I'm suggesting that someone with your skills and experience could create a unique career that serves multiple purposes. Financial analysis for charitable organizations during the day, music therapy oversight in the evenings and weekends. Unconventional, but then again, the most effective solutions usually are. The possibility was dizzying. Why would you be willing to accommodate something like that? Because I've learned that the best employees are the ones who feel connected to their work on multiple levels. Someone who understands both the business side and the human impact of what we do will be more effective than someone who only sees the numbers. Sarah stood and walked to her window, gazing out at the city below. Catherine told me about your daughter's hospitalization 3 years ago, about how you played piano in the family lounge to cope with your own anxiety and inadvertently provided comfort to other families. Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. I had no idea anyone was listening. That's what made it so powerful. You weren't performing for an audience, you were processing your own experience through music. That kind of authenticity is rare. She turned back to face him. I'm going to offer you the position, Marcus. Senior financial analyst, focusing on nonprofit clients, with the flexibility to pursue the foundation work if you choose. But I want you to understand that this isn't charity, it's a business decision based on your qualifications and potential. The words Marcus had hoped to hear, but now they felt almost secondary to the larger opportunity taking shape. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it. I talked to Emma about staying in Chicago. Visit the foundation's offices if you want to see their operation firsthand. Sarah returned to her chair, but don't overthink it. Sometimes the best decisions are the ones that feel right in your gut, even if they don't make perfect sense on paper. A soft knock interrupted them. The receptionist peeked in. It's Peterson. Emma Williams is asking if she can see the view from your office. Of course. Sarah smiled. Send her in. Emma entered the office with the careful steps of someone trying to be on their best behavior. Her eyes immediately went to the floor-to-ceiling windows, and she let out a small gasp at the panoramic view of the city. You can see everything from up here, she breathed. It's quite a view, Sarah agreed. Emma, your father and I have been talking about the possibility of you staying in Chicago. Would you feel about that? Emma's face lit up with excitement. Really, we could live here? With all the tall buildings and museums? If your father decides to take the job I've offered him? Yes. Emma turned to Marcus with shining eyes. Daddy, can we, please? The pure joy in her expression was almost overwhelming. Marcus had been prepared for this decision to be complex, weighing financial considerations against personal fulfillment. But seeing Emma's excitement, imagining her thriving in a city that could offer her culture and opportunity, suddenly made everything clear. We'll see, sweetheart. It's a big decision. But you like it here, right? You played piano in the lobby last night, and you only do that when you're feeling hopeful? Sarah raised an eyebrow. Is that true? Marcus felt his face warm. She's very observant. I think hope is a good foundation for any major decision, Sarah said. Why don't you two spend the rest of the day exploring the city? I'll need an answer by the end of the week, but there's no rush to decide right now. As they prepared to leave, Sarah handed Marcus a folder. Information about the position, benefit details, and contact information for Catherine in case you want to see the foundation's facilities. Thank you, Marcus said, for everything. This is more than I hoped for. Don't thank me yet. Wait until you see how challenging nonprofit financial analysis can be. Some of our clients are brilliant at their mission, but creative with their bookkeeping. Emma tugged on Marcus's sleeve. Can we go to the museum now? And maybe walk by the lake? Absolutely. Marcus shook Sarah's hand. I'll be in touch soon. As they waited for the elevator, Emma bounced on her toes with excitement. I love Chicago, Daddy. It feels like a place where good things happen. Looked down at his daughter, seeing her excitement as a reflection of possibilities he'd barely allowed himself to imagine. It does feel that way, doesn't it? The elevator doors opened, and as they descended toward the lobby, Marcus felt something shift inside him. For the first time in years, he was contemplating a future that offered both security and meaning. A career that could provide for Emma while also honoring the part of himself that needed to create, to heal, to contribute something beyond mere survival. When they stepped out onto the busy Chicago sidewalk, Emma immediately began planning their afternoon adventure. Can we see the bean sculpture and the lake? And maybe find a music store? We can do all of that, Marcus said, surprising himself with his certainty, as they walked toward the lakefront. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text message from Catherine Brennan. Sarah says the meeting went well. The foundation offices are open this afternoon if you'd like to visit. No pressure, just an opportunity to see what Tyler's legacy has become. Marcus showed the message to Emma, who read it with the careful attention she gave to everything important. Whose? Tyler? She asked. A little boy who loved music. He died a few years ago, but his grandmother started a foundation to bring music to sick children in hospitals. Emma considered this with the gravity she reserved for serious topics. That's sad, but also beautiful. Music does help when you're scared or hurt. How do you know that? 'Cause you always hum when I'm sick, and it makes me feel better even when nothing else does. Simple truth of her observation hit him with unexpected force. Music had been his language for processing emotion long before he'd understood its power to heal others. Maybe Catherine was right. Maybe some melodies existed in the space between hearts, waiting for the right moment to be shared. "Would you like to visit the foundation this afternoon?" he asked. "See what they do?" Emma nodded eagerly. "Can we hear some of the music they use to help children?" "I think that can be arranged." As they walked toward Lake Michigan, Marcus felt the weight of decision settling around him like a familiar melody. Chicago stretched before them, full of possibility and promise, offering not just a job, but a calling, not just stability, but purpose. For the first time since Sandra had left, Marcus allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he was about to build something beautiful. The Tyler Brennan Foundation occupied the ground floor of a converted warehouse in Chicago's River North District, its red brick exterior giving no hint of the magic happening inside. Marcus and Emma stood before the glass entrance, watching through the windows as children and adults moved through brightly lit spaces filled with instruments and laughter. "It's bigger than I thought it would be," Emma whispered. Pressing her face to the glass, a young woman with purple-streaked hair and paint-stained fingers appeared at the door, opening it with a welcoming smile. "You must be Marcus and Emma. I'm Jessica Chen, the program coordinator. Catherine's expecting you." Inside, the space buzzed with purposeful energy. The main area had been divided into several zones: a recording studio with professional equipment, practice rooms with various instruments, and a large open area where a group of teenagers was learning to play ukuleles. The walls were covered with artwork created by children, photos from hospital visits, and testimonials from families whose lives had been touched by the foundation's work. "This is incredible," Marcus said, taking in the scope of the operation. "Wait until you see the rest," Jessica said, leading them deeper into space. "We serve 12 hospitals in the Chicago metro area, with plans to expand to Milwaukee and Indianapolis next year. We have 43 trained volunteers, 6 part-time staff members, and partnerships with 3 music schools that provide advanced training for our volunteers." Emma had gravitated toward a corner where several acoustic guitars hung on the wall. Next to a child-sized piano, her fingers traced the piano keys without pressing them. The same reverent touch Marcus recognized in himself when encountering a quality instrument. "She has good instincts," Jessica observed. "That's a Steinway baby grand, donated by a family whose daughter underwent successful cancer treatment at Children's Memorial." "Can I try it?" Emma asked, looking between Jessica and Marcus for permission. "Of course. That's what it's for." Emma settled onto the bench and began playing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star with careful precision. Her technique was basic, but her touch was gentle, coaxing rather than demanding sound from the keys. Several volunteers stopped their activities to listen, and Marcus felt a surge of pride mixed with bittersweet longing for the piano lessons he couldn't afford to give her. "She's taught herself?" Jessica asked. "Mostly. I showed her some basics, but we had to sell our piano last year." Nodded with understanding rather than pity. "A lot of our families have made similar sacrifices. That's part of why we do what we do, ensuring that financial circumstances don't determine whether children have access to music." Catherine emerged from a back office, her expression brightening when she saw Emma at the piano. She moved quietly to avoid disrupting the child's concentration, but her presence drew Marcus's attention. "She has natural musicality," Catherine murmured. "The way she's listening to each note, adjusting her touch based on what she hears that can't be taught." Emma finished her song and looked up expectantly. The volunteers who'd been listening burst into spontaneous applause, causing her to beam with pride. "That was beautiful, sweetheart," Catherine said, approaching the piano. "Would you like to hear about what we do here?" For the next hour, Catherine and Jessica guided them through the Foundation's various programs. They visited the recording studio where volunteers created personalized songs for children undergoing treatment. They watched a music therapy session conducted via video call with a hospital in Wisconsin. They examined instruments specially designed for children with limited mobility, including a keyboard that could be played with eye movements and percussion instruments that responded to the slightest touch. "The core of what we do is simple," Catherine explained as they sat in her office afterward. We bring music to children who need healing, hope, or simply a momentary escape from their circumstances. But the implementation is complex, requiring coordination with medical staff, training for volunteers, and ongoing relationships with families. Emma had fallen asleep in a comfortable chair, exhausted by the day's adventures. Her small form looked peaceful, one hand curled around a small wooden flute that Jessica had given her as a welcome gift. The position I mentioned last night would involve overseeing all of this, Catherine continued, her voice soft to avoid waking Emma. Developing new programs, training volunteers, managing relationships with hospitals, and yes, occasionally performing when the situation calls for it. Marcus studied the organizational chart on Catherine's wall, noting the careful balance between clinical expertise and artistic vision. How do you measure success in work like this? Different metrics than traditional business, Catherine admitted. We track the number of children served, hospitals partnered with, volunteers trained. But the real measure is in moments that can't be quantified, a child falling asleep, to live music instead of crying through another sleepless night, a family finding comfort in song during the worst period of their lives. She pulled out a thick folder from her desk drawer. These are letters from families we've served. Not all of them, just a representative sample from the past year. Marcus opened the folder and found himself reading testimonials that brought tears to his eyes. Parents describing how music helped their children communicate when medical procedures had left them unable to speak. Nurses noting improved patient cooperation during treatments that included musical accompaniment. Children themselves drawing pictures of instruments and writing thank you notes in crayon. The volunteer who worked with Tyler during his final days, David Martinez, wrote a report about that experience, Catherine said, pulling out a specific document. He mentioned the mysterious piano player who provided the soundtrack for Tyler's peaceful last nights. David said he'd never seen a child so calmed by music that he'd only heard secondhand. Marcus read David's account of Tyler's transformation during those final 48 hours. The boy who'd been agitated and frightened had become serene, humming melodies and asking questions about music theory that amazed the medical staff. According to David, Tyler had insisted that the piano man would come back someday to help other children, a prediction that now seemed prophetic. Tyler was right, Marcus said quietly. Children often see things more clearly than adults, Catherine replied. They don't get caught up in practicalities and impossibilities. They just know what feels true. Emma stirred in her chair, opening sleepy eyes to look around the office. Are we still at the music place? We are, Marcus said. Did you have a good nap? She nodded, then looked at Catherine with the directness that children possessed. Are you the lady who lost her grandson? Catherine's composure wavered slightly. I am. I'm sorry that happened. But I think he would be happy about all the music you're making for other children. The simple statement hit with more impact than any adult condolence could have achieved. Catherine wiped away tears she didn't try to hide. Thank you, Emma. I think he would be happy too. Marcus felt something shift inside him as he watched this. Exchanged for months, he'd been focused solely on providing basic security for Emma, food, shelter, stability. But seeing her natural empathy and musical instincts, he realized he'd been thinking too small. Emma didn't just need survival. She needed opportunities to grow into the remarkable person she was already becoming. I'd like to accept both positions, Marcus said suddenly. Catherine looked up with surprise. Both. The financial analyst role with Peterson and Associates and the music director position here. Sarah mentioned they could be structured to complement each other. Are you certain? This morning, you were concerned about stability and traditional career paths. Marcus glanced at Emma, who was quietly examining the wooden flute Jessica had given her. This morning I was thinking like someone who'd been knocked down too many times. But Emma reminded me of something important. Music helps when you're scared or hurt. Not just for the people receiving it, but for the people creating it too. He thought about the long months after Sandra left when he'd stopped playing piano, because it reminded him of everything he'd lost. The silence had been safer, but also emptier, cutting him off from the part of himself that processed the world through melody and harmony. I've been afraid to hope for too much, Marcus continued. but maybe that's exactly what I need to do. Hope for meaningful work that pays well enough to give Emma opportunities I never had. Hope for a career that feeds both the practical and artistic sides of who I am. Catherine smiled, the expression transforming her face. Tyler would approve. He always said that scared people make beautiful music because they understand what comfort sounds like. When could I start? The foundation position could begin immediately. We're starting a new volunteer training program next week that could use your input. The Peterson and Associates role would probably need a standard 2-week transition period. Emma looked up from her flute. Does this mean we're staying in Chicago, Daddy? It means we're staying in Chicago, Marcus confirmed. Emma's whoop of joy echoed through the office, causing volunteers in the main area to look up with amusement. She jumped from her chair and threw her arms around Marcus's neck. Can we get an apartment with room for a piano? She asked. I think that can be arranged, Marcus said, looking at Catherine. I have a feeling we're going to be around music quite a bit. Catherine stood and extended her hand to Marcus. Come to the Tyler Brennan Foundation family. I have a feeling this is going to be the beginning of something extraordinary. As they shook hands, Marcus felt the last pieces of his new life clicking into place. It's a hotel lobby encounter that had seemed like mere coincidence now revealed itself as something more purposeful, convergence of need and opportunity, of loss, transformed into healing. There's one more thing, Catherine said, reaching into her desk drawer again. I'd like Emma to have this. She pulled out a small digital music player, the kind designed for children. This contains recordings of all the songs Tyler loved, plus pieces performed by our volunteers at various hospitals. I thought she might enjoy listening, maybe even learning some of them. Emma accepted the gift with reverence. Thank you. I'll take very good care of it. I know you will. As they prepared to leave the foundation, Jessica approached with a manila envelope. Information packets for new staff members, she explained. Training schedules, hospital protocols, emergency contacts. Also a list of local piano teachers who work with our families. Several of them offer sliding scale fees for foundation employees. Marcus accepted the envelope, feeling the weight of his new responsibilities settling around him like a comfortable coat. Thank you for everything. Thank us by doing what you do best, Jessica said, making music that heals. Outside the foundation building, Chicago's evening energy surrounded them with promises of new beginnings. Emma skipped along the sidewalk, humming melodies from her new music player, while Marcus planned their immediate next steps, finding temporary housing, enrolling Emma in school, purchasing clothes suitable for his new professional roles. Daddy, Emma said as they waited for a taxi. I think Tyler was right about you coming back to help. What makes you say that? 'Cause you're smiling. Really smiling, not just the kind you do when you're trying to make me feel better. Marcus realized she was right. Despite the uncertainty that lay ahead, despite the major life changes they were about to undertake, he felt genuinely optimistic. For the first time in years, I am happy, he admitted. Are you? I'm excited. Chicago feels like home already. As their taxi pulled up to the curb, Marcus looked back at the foundation building. Through the windows, he could see volunteers preparing for evening programs, instruments being arranged for the next day's hospital visits. The careful orchestration of healing through music. Tomorrow he would start learning the administrative systems that kept this operation running. Next week, he would begin his role at Peterson and Associates, diving into the financial complexities of nonprofit management. But tonight, he and Emma were simply a father and daughter who'd found their way to a city that promised both stability and purpose. Where to? The taxi driver asked. The Grandview Hotel, Marcus said. But first, is there a music store nearby? My daughter needs a keyboard to practice on. Emma's delighted squeal filled the taxi as they pulled away from the curb, heading toward an evening of piano shopping and the first night of their new Chicago life. Through the rear window, Marcus watched the foundation building disappear around a corner, carrying with it Tyler's legacy and the promise of music that healed both the listener and the performer in his pocket. Catherine's business card had been joined by Sarah's contact information and Jessica's program materials. Tomorrow would bring contracts to sign, apartments to view, and schools to investigate. But tonight belonged to possibility itself, stretching out before them like an unwritten song, waiting for the right hands to bring it to life. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the pediatric intensive care unit at Rush University Medical Center, watching 9-year-old Sophia Chen fight for her life. The ventilator's rhythmic breathing filled the sterile room, accompanied by the steady beep of monitors tracking her fragile vital signs. Her parents, David and Ming Chen, sat beside her bed with the hollow-eyed exhaustion that Marcus had come to recognize in families facing their worst nightmares.
Ow.
She hasn't responded to stimulation in 3 days. Dr. Rebecca Torres explained quietly in the hallway outside Sophia's room. The brain injury from the accident was severe. We're doing everything medically possible, but sometimes patients in her condition benefit from alternative approaches. Marcus nodded, understanding the delicate way medical professionals suggested. Music therapy without making promises they couldn't keep. In his 6 months as music director for the Tyler Brennan Foundation, he'd learned that his role wasn't to provide miracles, it was to offer comfort, connection, and sometimes the spark that helped healing begin. What kind of music did Sophia enjoy before the accident? Marcus asked. Classical piano, according to her parents. She'd been taking lessons for 3 years and was working on a Chopin piece when... Torres's voice trailed off. Chopin.
That's
A good starting point. Marcus entered Sophia's room, carrying a small digital piano, one of several portable instruments the foundation used for bedside visits. The Chens looked up with cautious hope, an expression he'd seen countless times, the desperate willingness to try anything that might reach their child. I'm Marcus Williams from the Tyler Brennan Foundation, he said softly. Dr. Torres mentioned that Sophia loves piano music. Ming Chen wiped tears from her eyes. She practices every day. Or she did, before. She gestured helplessly at the complex medical equipment surrounding her daughter. Would it be all right if I played for her? Sometimes familiar music can provide comfort, even when patients aren't responsive. David Chen nodded eagerly. Please, we'll try anything. Marcus set up the digital piano near Sophia's bed, adjusting the volume to a gentle level that wouldn't interfere with the medical equipment. He'd learned to navigate hospital protocols efficiently. Working within the constraints of sterile environments and medical procedures, he began with Chopin's Minute Waltz, playing it slowly and gently rather than at its typical brisk tempo. The melody filled the room, mixing with the mechanical sounds of life support to create an odd but strangely comforting harmony. Ming Chen gasped softly. Her daughter's right hand, which had been motionless for days, twitched slightly. Sophia. David leaned forward, grasping his daughter's other hand. Can you hear the music, sweetheart? Marcus continued playing, transitioning seamlessly into Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, the same piece he'd played in the hotel lobby that night he'd met Catherine. Sophia's finger movements became more pronounced, as if she was trying to play along with melodies locked in her memory. She's trying to play, Ming whispered in amazement. Look at her fingers. Dr. Torres appeared in the doorway, drawn by the family's excited voices. She observed Sophia's responses with clinical interest, noting the subtle changes in the girl's breathing pattern and the slight increase in her heart rate that indicated awareness. This is the most neurological activity we've seen since she arrived, Dr. Torres said quietly. Whatever you're doing, please continue. For the next hour, Marcus played pieces he'd learned were common in children's piano repertoires. Sophia's responses varied. Some pieces produced no reaction while others caused obvious agitation in her vital signs or visible attempts at finger movements. When he played Beethoven's Far Elise, Sophia's eyes actually fluttered. The first time she'd shown any visual responsiveness. That's her favorite piece, David said, his voice thick with emotion. She played it at her spring recital 2 months ago. Marcus repeated Far Elise several times, watching Sophia's face for signs of recognition. On the third repetition, her lips moved slightly, as if she was trying to hum along. Ming Chen burst into tears, clutching her husband's hand. In there, Ming sobbed. She's still in there. Dr. Torres had called in the neurological team, who observed the session with fascination. Sophia's brain activity, as measured by the EEG monitors, showed patterns they hadn't seen since her admission. While she remained unconscious, The music was clearly reaching parts of her brain that medical interventions hadn't been able to access. "We'd like to schedule regular sessions," Dr. Torres told Marcus as he packed up his equipment.
What?
"Available, perhaps daily visits until we see how she progresses?" "Of course," Marcus replied. "That's exactly why we do this work." As Marcus left the hospital that evening, his phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Dad, I got first chair flute in the school orchestra. Can't wait to tell you about rehearsal." He smiled, remembering Emma's audition 3 weeks ago. Nervous about competing with students who'd had private lessons since elementary school, but her natural musicality and the intensive practice sessions they'd shared had paid off. The apartment they'd found in Lincoln Park included a small music room where Marcus had installed an upright piano as grand as his old instrument. But sufficient for both his practice and Emma's developing skills, Emma had blossomed in Chicago. Beyond his wildest expectations, Washington Elementary School's music program was exceptional, offering opportunities for students to explore multiple instruments and participate in various ensembles. Emma had gravitated toward the flute while maintaining her piano studies with Mrs. Rodriguez, a volunteer from the foundation who taught several children of staff members. Marcus arrived home to find Emma practicing scales on her flute, her music stand positioned near the living room window where the afternoon light was best. At 8.5, she approached music with the methodical precision of someone much older, breaking down complex passages into manageable segments and working through them systematically. "How was the hospital today?" she asked, setting down her instrument. "It's challenging but hopeful." "I worked with a girl about your age who was in an accident." She responded to music for the first time since it happened. Emma nodded with the matter-of-fact acceptance she'd developed regarding Marcus's work. She'd visited the foundation several times and understood that music could help sick children in ways that medicine alone couldn't achieve. "Did you play Chopin? You always play Chopin when someone needs extra comfort?" Marcus marveled at her perceptiveness. "I did play Chopin. How did you know?" "'Cause that's what you played the night we arrived in Chicago. You told me later it was because you were scared but also hopeful. People in hospitals probably feel the same way." Her insight continually amazed him. Emma had developed an intuitive understanding of music's emotional language that went far beyond her technical abilities. Sometimes Marcus wondered if she'd inherited more than just his ear for melody. Perhaps she'd also gained his instinct for using music as a bridge between hearts. "Speaking of Chopin," Emma said, moving to the piano bench, "I want to show you something I've been working on." She began playing the opening measures of Chopin's Minute Waltz, the same piece Marcus had played for Sophia that afternoon. Emma's version was simplified, adapted for her skill level. But she captured the essential character of the piece with remarkable sensitivity. "Mrs. Rodriguez helped me arrange it," Emma explained as she played. "She said it was too advanced for me technically, but that my musical understanding was ready for it." Marcus listened with pride and wonder. 6 months ago, Emma had been playing simple children's songs on a borrowed keyboard in their Phoenix apartment. Now she was tackling Chopin with confidence and genuine musical expression. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. You're developing into a real pianist. I want to be like you," Emma said seriously. "I want to help people with music." The statement hit Marcus with unexpected force. He'd been so focused on providing Emma with opportunities he'd never had that he hadn't considered she might choose to follow in his footsteps. "There are many ways to help people with music," he said carefully. "Performance, teaching, therapy, composition. You don't have to limit yourself to what I do, I know. But I like the idea of playing for people who are scared or sad. Music makes everything feel less scary." That evening, after Emma had finished her homework and gone to bed, Marcus sat at the piano working through pieces for the next day's hospital visits. He'd developed a repertoire specifically for pediatric settings, changes for anxious patients, energetic music for children needing motivation during physical therapy, familiar melodies that could spark memories in patients with neurological conditions. His phone rang, displaying Catherine's number. "How did the session with Sophia Chen go?" she asked without preamble. "Promising. She showed more neurological activity during the music than she has since the accident. Dr. Torres wants to schedule daily sessions." "Excellent. I have more good news." The board approved funding for 2 additional music therapists. We're expanding to cover Cook Children's Hospital and Advocate Illinois Masonic. Marcus felt a surge of satisfaction. The foundation's growth meant they could help more families, reaching children who might otherwise face their medical challenges without the comfort of music. There's something else, Catherine continued. Northwestern Memorial has requested a permanent music therapy position. Someone on staff who could integrate musical interventions directly into treatment protocols. It would be a hybrid role, part clinical work and part administration. It sounds like exactly what we've been hoping for. I'd like you to consider taking it. The position would allow you to maintain your foundation duties while pioneering new approaches to music therapy in hospital settings. It's a significant opportunity to influence how medical institutions think about holistic patient care. Marcus considered the offer. 6 months ago, he'd been desperate for any stable employment. Now he was being offered the chance to shape the future of an entire field. What would it mean for my work with Peterson and Associates? Sarah and I have discussed this. She's willing to restructure your financial analyst role to focus specifically on healthcare nonprofits. You'd essentially become the bridge between the business and clinical sides of medical philanthropy. The opportunity was staggering in its scope and potential impact. Marcus would be helping design the financial frameworks that allowed music therapy programs to expand while simultaneously developing the clinical protocols that made them effective. I need to discuss it with Emma, Marcus said. Major career decisions affect both of us. Of course, take your time. But Marcus, this is the kind of position that could influence thousands of children's lives over the coming years. Tyler would be proud to know his legacy is growing into something this significant. After ending the call, Marcus walked to Emma's bedroom and found her sound asleep, her flute case open on the nightstand and sheet music scattered across her desk. She'd been working on an arrangement of Amazing Grace for the school's holiday concert, approaching it with the same methodical dedication she applied to everything musical. Looking at his daughter's peaceful face, Marcus realized that the decision Catherine had presented wasn't really about his career. It was about the kind of world he wanted to build for Emma and children like her. A world where music was recognized as essential to healing, where hospitals embraced artistic interventions alongside medical ones, where no family had to face their worst moments without the comfort of melody and harmony. The next morning, Marcus arrived at Rush University Medical Center to find Sophia Chen's room filled with excited energy. She'd opened her eyes during the night shift and had been asking for music when she woke up. While still weak and disoriented, she was clearly conscious and responsive. She keeps asking about the piano player, Ming Chen told Marcus tearfully. She said she dreamed about beautiful music that helped her find her way back. Sophia was awake when Marcus entered her room, her dark eyes tracking his movement as he set up the digital piano. She looked impossibly small, surrounded by medical equipment, but her gaze was alert and focused. "You're the music man," she said, in a weak but clear voice. "I am." "How are you feeling, Sophia?" "I've been sleeping for a very long time." Music kept me company. Marcus began playing. Far Elise, and Sophia's face lit up with recognition. She tried to move her fingers in playing position, though her coordination was still impaired from the brain injury. "I know that song," she whispered. "I can play it too. I'm sure you can. When you're feeling stronger, maybe we can play together? Promise?" Marcus looked at this brave child who'd fought her way back from the edge of consciousness and made a decision that would shape the rest of his career. "I promise. And I'll be here to help you practice until you're ready to perform it again." As Sophia drifted back to sleep with a smile on her face, Marcus knew he would accept Catherine's offer. This was where he belonged, at the intersection of music and healing, helping children find their way back to themselves through the universal language of melody and hope. The boy named Tyler, whom he'd never met, but whose legacy had changed his life, would indeed be proud to know that his story had grown into something that touched lives far beyond anyone's imagination. 2 years after that fateful midnight encounter in the Grandview Hotel lobby, Marcus stood before a packed auditorium at the University of Chicago Medical Center. The annual conference on integrative pediatric care had drawn doctors, nurses, therapists, and administrators from across the country, all gathered to explore innovative approaches to childhood healing. Music therapy is an alternative medicine, Marcus told the audience, his voice carrying the confidence born of countless successful interventions. It's evidence-based treatment that engages neurological pathways that traditional medicine alone cannot reach. In the past 18 months, we've documented measurable improvements in patient outcomes when musical interventions are integrated into standard care protocols. The presentation screen behind him showed brain scans of Sophia Chan before, during, and after her music therapy sessions. The visual evidence was striking. Areas of her brain that had been dormant after her accident had gradually reactivated in response to specific musical stimuli. Sophia Chen, whom you see here, not only made a full recovery, but has returned to playing piano at an advanced level. Her neurological healing accelerated dramatically once we identified the precise musical patterns that triggered her brain's repair mechanisms. In the audience, Dr. Rebecca Torres nodded approvingly. She'd become one of Marcus's strongest advocates after witnessing Sophia's transformation, and had pioneered the integration of music therapy into Rush University's standard treatment protocols. For neurological patients, Marcus advanced to the next slide, showing statistical data from 12 hospitals now participating in the Tyler Brennan Foundation's expanded program. Patient anxiety levels decreased an average of 43% during medical procedures when live music was present. Recovery time for surgical patients averaged 18% shorter when music therapy was included in postoperative care. Most significantly, family satisfaction scores increased across all measured categories. The numbers told a compelling story, but Marcus knew the real impact lived in moments that couldn't be quantified. Children who'd found their voices, again through song. Families who'd discovered comfort in melodies during their darkest hours. Medical staff who'd learned to see their patients as whole human beings rather than collections of symptoms. The position we're announcing today represents the next evolution of this work, Marcus continued. Northwestern Memorial Hospital has created the nation's first director of clinical music therapy position, a role that will oversee the integration of musical interventions across all pediatric departments while conducting research on the neurological mechanisms that make music such a powerful healing tool. Catherine Brennan, sitting in the front row, smiled with the satisfaction of someone watching a vision become reality. The position she'd offered Marcus 18 months ago had grown beyond either of their initial expectations, evolving into a pioneering role that other hospitals were already expressing interest in replicating. After the presentation, Marcus was surrounded by medical professionals eager to learn more about implementing music therapy programs in their own institutions. Dr. Jennifer Walsh from Phoenix Children's Hospital pressed him for details about training protocols. Dr. Michael Rivera from Boston Children's shared data from their preliminary music therapy pilot program. The key is starting small, but thinking systematically, Marcus explained to the group. Don't try to revolutionize your entire hospital overnight. Pick one department, establish clear protocols, document everything meticulously, and let the results speak for themselves. What about funding? Asked Dr. Walsh. Hospital administrators love the concept, but struggle with the budget implications. That's where the business side becomes crucial, Marcus replied. Music therapy programs typically pay for themselves within 18 months through reduced pharmaceutical costs, shorter hospital stays, and improved patient satisfaction scores. The Peterson and Associates analysis we completed last year shows return on investment averaging 230% over 3 years. The crowd gradually dispersed. Several doctors lingered to exchange contact information and discuss potential collaborations. Marcus felt energized by their enthusiasm, remembering his own skepticism when Catherine first described music therapies. Potential impact? His phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Dad, I'm watching your presentation online. You look like a real doctor up there. Can't wait for tonight's surprise. Marcus smiled. Emma, now 10 years old, had developed into a remarkable musician in her own right. She'd been accepted into the Chicago Youth Symphony's preparatory program and was working on her first composition piece, inspired by the stories Marcus brought home from the hospital. Tonight's surprise was her first public performance of the composition at the Foundation's annual fundraising gala, The Tyler Brennan Foundation had grown exponentially since Marcus joined the staff. What had begun as a small Chicago-based organization now served hospitals in 6 states, trained over 200 volunteers annually, and had inspired similar programs across the country. The evening's gala would celebrate this growth while raising funds for further expansion. Marcus arrived at the Palmer House Hilton 2 hours before the event to oversee final preparations. The ballroom had been transformed into an elegant space that honored Tyler's memory while celebrating the joy his legacy had brought to thousands of children. Photos from hospital visits lined the walls, showing volunteers with patients, endlessly smiling despite difficult circumstances, and children engaged with various instruments. Catherine found him adjusting the positioning of the grand piano that would serve as the evening's centerpiece. "Nervous?" she asked. "Always before these events? There's so much riding on them, funding for next year's programs, awareness for music therapy in general. And tonight, Emma's debut performance. She'll be magnificent. I heard her practicing yesterday, and her composition is extraordinary for someone her age." Emma's piece, titled Healing Harmonies, wove together melodies she'd collected from Marcus's hospital stories. She'd interviewed several families the foundation had served, incorporating musical phrases that held special meaning for them into a cohesive composition that told the story of hope persevering through hardship. "Have you decided about the Northwestern position?" Catherine asked. Marcus had been wrestling with the decision for weeks. Accepting the role would mean leaving the foundation's day-to-day operations. Though he'd maintain involvement through research collaborations and program development, it would also mean higher visibility and greater influence in shaping the future of music therapy as a recognized medical discipline. "I want to take it," Marcus said finally. "But I'm concerned about leaving you and Jessica to handle the foundations. Growth without support. You've hired 2 additional music directors and a new program coordinator," Catherine reminded him. "The foundation is strong enough now to operate without depending on any single person." That's exactly what Tyler would have wanted, a legacy that could sustain itself and keep growing. Marcus nodded, knowing she was right. The foundation had evolved far beyond what any of them had initially envisioned, becoming a model for music therapy programs worldwide. Guests began arriving for the cocktail reception. It's a mix of medical professionals, foundation supporters, and families whose children had been served by the programs. Marcus spotted Sophia Chen across the room, now 11 years old and fully recovered from her accident. She was talking animatedly with other young musicians about their upcoming performance together. "Mr. Williams," Sophia rushed over her face, bright with excitement. "I can't believe I get to perform with Emma tonight. She taught me the harmony parts for her composition, and they're so beautiful. She's very excited to perform with you too. How are your piano lessons going?" "Amazing. My teacher says I play with more expression now than before the accident. She thinks the music therapy helped me understand how melodies can carry emotions." Sophia's parents approached, both looking far different from the devastated couple Marcus had first met in the hospital. David Chin had become a foundation board member, while Ming had trained as a volunteer music therapist herself. "We can never thank you enough," Ming said, embracing Marcus warmly.
"Oh."
Sophia's recovery changed our understanding of what medicine can accomplish when it addresses the whole person, not just the injury. "Your family changed my understanding too," Marcus replied. "Sophia showed me that music therapy isn't about the therapist. It's about creating space for the patient's own healing capacity to emerge." The formal program began with Catherine welcoming the audience and sharing statistics about the foundation's growth. The numbers were impressive. Over 3,000 children served in the past year. Partnerships with 42 hospitals and a 96% family satisfaction rate. "But numbers only tell part of our story," Catherine said. "The real measure of our success lives in the children and families who've discovered that music can transform the experience of illness from something that happens to you into something you participate in healing from." She introduced a video montage featuring testimonials from families, medical staff, and young patients themselves. Marcus watched faces in the audience as they heard children describing how music had helped them cope with treatments, how singing had made them feel brave during surgery, how learning instruments had given them goals to work toward during recovery. Then came the evening's musical program. Sophia performed Chopin's Minute Waltz, the same piece that had helped trigger her neurological recovery 2 years earlier. Her technique was flawless, but more importantly, her interpretation carried emotional depth that spoke to her journey. Through trauma and healing, Emma took the stage next. Looking surprisingly composed for a 10-year-old, about to perform her first original composition for an audience of 300 people, she'd chosen to perform solo piano excerpts from Healing, harmonies explaining the inspiration behind each melodic theme. This section represents the fear that families feel when someone they love gets sick, Emma said, playing a minor key passage that conveyed anxiety and uncertainty. But then the music changes, because that's when people like my dad arrive, too. Remind everyone that they're not alone. The melody shifted to major keys, becoming warmer and more hopeful, while maintaining complexity that kept the audience engaged. Emma's musical storytelling was sophisticated beyond her years, demonstrating both technical skill and emotional intelligence. The ending represents what I've learned from watching my dad work, Emma continued. Healing isn't about making everything perfect again. It's about finding beauty and strength in whatever circumstances you're facing. The final passages of her composition wove together all the previous themes into a resolution that was simultaneously peaceful and energizing. When she finished, the audience erupted in sustained applause, many wiping away tears. Marcus felt overwhelmed. With pride as Emma took her bow, she'd grown into a remarkable young person. Shaped by the unique experiences of being raised in a family dedicated to healing through music. More than that, she'd found her own voice as an artist, creating music that spoke to universal experiences of vulnerability and resilience. Sophia joined Emma on stage for the evening's finale, a duet arrangement of Amazing Grace that incorporated both classical and contemporary elements. Their performance was polished but also deeply personal. As two young musicians who understood that music could be a bridge between suffering and hope. As the formal program concluded, guests moved to a reception area where the foundation had set up interactive music stations. Children could try various instruments, while their parents learned about volunteer opportunities and program expansion plans. Marcus found himself in conversation with Dr. Elena Rodriguez, Chief of Pediatrics at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. "We've been following your work for 2 years," she said. "I'm hoping you might consider consulting on a music therapy program we're developing. The preliminary research is promising, but we need someone with your experience to help design the clinical protocols." "I'd be very interested," Marcus replied, "especially if we can structure it as a research collaboration that contributes to the broader evidence base for music therapy effectiveness." "That's exactly what we have in mind." There's also interest from the National Institutes of Health in funding a multi-site study on music therapy outcomes. Your work at Northwestern could serve as the primary research site. The conversation excited Marcus more than any career opportunity he'd previously considered. The chance to establish music therapy as a recognized medical discipline, supported by rigorous research and implemented across major medical centers, represented the ultimate evolution of Tyler's legacy. Emma appeared at his side, still glowing. From her performance, "Dad, people keep telling me my song made them cry. Is that good or bad?" "It's very good," Marcus assured her. "Music that moves people to tears is music that's reached their hearts. You should be proud of what you created tonight." "I am proud, and I've decided something important." "What's that?" "I want to study music therapy when I'm older. Not because you do it, but because I understand now how music can help people heal. I want to learn the science behind why it works." Marcus felt a surge of joy mixed with concern. He wanted Emma to follow her own passions, not feel obligated to continue his work. "That's a wonderful goal, but you should explore all your interests. You might discover other ways to help people that suit you even better." "I know, but music feels right. Like it's what I'm supposed to do with my life." As the evening wound down and guests began departing, Marcus stood with Catherine and Emma. In the emptying ballroom, the grand piano remained on stage, its polished surface reflecting the chandelier lights like still water. "Tyler would be amazed by what his legacy has become," Catherine said softly. "A foundation serving thousands of children, research that's changing medical practice, and a new generation of musicians like Emma who understand that their talents can heal the world." Marcus thought about the frightened, desperate man who'd played piano in a hotel lobby 2 years ago, searching for comfort in an uncertain future. That midnight performance had set in motion changes he never could have imagined, not just in his own life, but in the lives of countless families facing medical crises. "I have an announcement to make," Marcus said. "I'm accepting the Northwestern position. It's time to take Tyler's story to the next level." Emma squeezed his hand. "Does this mean we're staying in Chicago?" "It means we're staying in Chicago. And we're going to help build something that will change how hospitals everywhere think about healing children." As they prepared to leave the Palmer house, Marcus took one last look at the grand piano on stage. Tomorrow he would begin the process of transitioning into his new role, designing research protocols that would establish music therapy as standard medical practice. But tonight belonged to celebration of Tyler's enduring legacy, of Emma's emerging artistry, and of the impossible journey that had brought them all together through the universal language of music. The boy who died too young had given them all a blueprint for transforming suffering into hope, one melody at a time. 5 years had passed since Marcus first played piano in the Grandview Hotel lobby, and now he stood in an entirely different kind of lobby, the soaring atrium of the newly opened Tyler Brennan Center for Music and Healing at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting rainbow patterns across the white marble floor where a Steinway concert grand piano sat as the centerpiece of the space. Dr. Williams, the delegation from Beijing Children's Hospital, has arrived, announced Dr. Sarah Kim, his research coordinator. The title still felt surreal to Marcus. Dr. Williams, his doctorate in music therapy, completed through an accelerated program while working full-time, had been awarded just 6 months ago. The dissertation on neurological responses to musical intervention had already been cited in over 200 research papers worldwide. "Thank you, Sarah. Please escort them to conference room A. I'll join them after I finish with the CNN interview." The media attention had been overwhelming since the publication of his landmark study in the New England Journal of Medicine, quantifying the neurological impact of music therapy in pediatric brain injury recovery, had provided the definitive scientific evidence that music therapy worked not just as comfort care, but as active medical treatment that literally rewired damaged brains. Marcus straightened his tie and walked toward the media center. Passing walls lined with photographs documenting the center's impact, children in hospital beds smiling as volunteers played instruments beside them, families embracing after successful treatments that had incorporated musical interventions. Medical students are learning to integrate artistic approaches into clinical practice. The CNN health correspondent, Dr. Ava Martinez, was setting up her equipment near the piano. She'd covered Marcus's work before, following the story from its early days as an experimental program to its current status as a model being replicated worldwide. "Dr. Williams, your center has trained over 500 music therapists in the past 3 years," Dr. Martinez said as the cameras began rolling. "What makes your approach different from traditional music therapy programs?" "We've moved beyond anecdotal evidence to establish music therapy as precision medicine," Marcus replied. "Each patient receives a customized musical intervention based on their specific neurological condition, emotional state, and personal musical preferences. We use brain imaging to monitor responses in real time and adjust treatments accordingly." "Can you give us a specific example?" Marcus thought of 12-year-old David Park, currently recovering in the pediatric wing after a severe traumatic brain injury. "We're working with a young patient whose language centers were damaged in an accident. Traditional speech therapy made minimal progress. But when we mapped his musical responses using fMRI imaging, we discovered that rhythmic patterns activated undamaged areas of his brain that could compensate for the injured regions. And the results? After 6 weeks of targeted rhythmic therapy combined with melodic exercises designed specifically for his neural patterns, he's regained 60% of his vocabulary. More importantly, his brain has developed new pathways that will continue strengthening over time." The interview continued for 20 minutes, covering the center's research programs, training initiatives, and international expansion. Marcus had become comfortable with media attention, understanding that public awareness was crucial for advancing the field, and securing funding for continued research. As the crew packed up their equipment, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Dad just got accepted to Northwestern's accelerated MD-PhD program. Music therapy research track. Can't wait to tell you everything. Marcus felt his heart swell with pride and a touch of concern. Emma, now 15, had shown remarkable academic aptitude alongside her musical talents. She'd completed high school 2 years early and had been accepted to several prestigious universities. Her decision to pursue the medical track at Northwestern meant she could work directly with Marcus's research team while completing her studies. "Everything all right?" Dr. Martinez asked, noticing his expression. "My daughter just got accepted to medical school. She's following in my footsteps, apparently." "How old is she?" 15? "She's been living and breathing this work since she was 8 years old. Sometimes I wonder if I've influenced her too much. But she seems genuinely passionate about the science behind music therapy. The next generation of researchers often surpass their mentors," Dr. Martinez observed, "especially when they've grown up understanding both the human and scientific sides of the work." After the media crew departed, Marcus made his way to Conference Room A, where representatives from Beijing Children's Hospital were waiting to discuss establishing a sister program in China. The international interest in the Tyler Brennan Center had been explosive, with hospitals from 6 continents requesting training and consultation services. Dr. Li Wei, chief of pediatric neurology at Beijing Children's, stood as Marcus entered the room. "Dr. Williams, thank you for meeting with us. Your research has captured significant attention in China, particularly your work with autism spectrum patients." "I'm delighted by the international interest," Marcus replied. "Music appears to be truly universal in its therapeutic applications. Though cultural contexts certainly influence specific approaches," Dr. Li nodded enthusiastically. "That's precisely what we hope to explore. Chinese traditional music uses different scales and rhythmic patterns than Western music. We believe there may be unique therapeutic applications we haven't yet discovered." The conversation that followed excited Marcus more than any previous international collaboration. The possibility of researching how different musical traditions affected neurological healing could revolutionize understanding of brain plasticity and cultural influences on medical treatment. "We're prepared to fund a 5-year research exchange," Dr. Li continued. "Chinese researchers would train here for 6 months, then return to Beijing to establish our program. In exchange, your team would spend comparable time in China studying traditional music therapy approaches." "That's an extraordinary opportunity," Marcus said. "I'll need to discuss it with our board and research committee, but I'm very interested in pursuing this collaboration." After the Beijing delegation departed, Marcus found himself alone in the center's main atrium. The late afternoon sun created dramatic shadows across the piano, reminding him of that first night in the hotel lobby when everything had changed. He sat down at the bench and began playing softly, a habit he'd maintained despite his increasingly administrative responsibilities. The melody that emerged was new, something he'd been composing for Emma's upcoming 16th birthday. She'd requested a piece that captured their journey together. From the frightened father and daughter who'd driven cross-country for a job interview to the confident medical researcher and future doctor they'd become. "You know, I've been listening. You play piano for 5 years and you still surprise me?" Marcus looked up to see Catherine approaching across the marble floor. Now in her late 60s, she moved with the energy of someone decades younger. Energized by watching Tyler's legacy grow beyond her wildest dreams. "The piece isn't finished yet," Marcus said, continuing to play softly. "I'm trying to capture the sense of possibility that Emma radiates these days. She's remarkable. She's 15 years old and already contributing to research publications. Dr. Peterson at the university says she has an intuitive understanding of neuroscience that typically takes graduate students years to develop." Marcus felt the familiar mix of pride and concern that came with having a gifted child. "Sometimes I worry that she's growing up too fast, missing normal teenage experiences because she's so focused on academics and music." "Have you asked her about that?" "She insists she's exactly where she wants to be. Says her friends are medical students and research assistants, and she couldn't be happier." Catherine settled into a nearby chair, listening as Marcus continued. Playing Tyler was like that, too wise beyond his years, more interested in deep conversations than typical child activities. Some souls are born with old understanding. Speaking of Tyler, Marcus said, transitioning to a melody he'd composed. In the boy's memory, I had an interesting conversation with a documentary filmmaker this morning. PBS wants to produce a film about the center's work, starting with Tyler's story and showing how it evolved into what we have today. That could bring tremendous awareness to music therapy as a field. My thoughts exactly. The filmmaker, Angela Rodriguez, has experience with medical documentaries. She wants to follow several current patients through their treatment journeys, interview families we've served over the years, and document the research process. Marcus paused his playing, considering the implications. There's one aspect that makes me hesitant. She wants to include the story of how you and I met that night in the hotel lobby. It feels very personal to share that publicly. Catherine was quiet for a long moment, her gaze fixed on the piano keys. Tyler died, believing that music had the power to heal the world, not just individual patients. If sharing our story helps, more people understand that possibility, then it honors his memory. Emma is excited about the documentary. She thinks it could inspire other young people to consider careers in music therapy research. What does Emma think about the Beijing collaboration? She asked if she could defer college enrollment for a year to participate in the research exchange. She wants to study how Chinese music affects Western patients and vice versa. The idea of Emma spending months in China at 15 felt overwhelming. To Marcus, even though he recognized her maturity and capability, she spoke Mandarin fluently, having studied it intensively for 3 years. And her research insights had already proven valuable to the team. She's ready for that kind of experience, Catherine observed. And you've raised her to be independent and thoughtful. Sometimes the best thing a parent can do is trust their child's judgment. Marcus resumed playing, working through a complex passage that reflected his internal struggle between protection and freedom. Emma had never shown interest in typical teenage activities, preferring to spend afternoons in the research lab or evenings composing music inspired by patient stories. There's something else, Marcus said. The National Science Foundation wants to fund a 10-year longitudinal study on music therapy effectiveness across multiple medical conditions. It would be the largest research project in the field's history. Incredible news. It would also mean significant expansion of our staff and facilities. We need to hire 12 additional researchers and construct a new wing for the center. The scope is almost overwhelming. Catherine smiled. 5 years ago, you were worried about whether you could provide stability for Emma. Now, you're contemplating research that could change medicine worldwide. Tyler always said that scared people make beautiful music because they understand what comfort sounds like. I'm not scared anymore, Marcus realized as he spoke. I'm excited. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, doing exactly what I was meant to do. The atrium doors opened, and Emma entered carrying a stack of research journals and her violin case. At 15, she moved with the confident purpose of someone much older. But her face still lit up with childlike enthusiasm when she saw Marcus at the piano. "Dad, play the new piece you've been working on," she called across the space. "It's not ready yet." "It's ready enough. I want Catherine to hear it." Marcus obliged, playing the melody he'd been composing for Emma's birthday. The piece wove together themes from their journey in certainty, transforming into hope, individual healing expanding into universal healing. The lonely piano in a hotel lobby, evolving into a concert grand in a world-renowned medical center, Emma set down her belongings and picked up her violin, listening carefully to identify the key and rhythm. Without sheet music, she began playing a harmony line that perfectly complemented Marcus's melody, adding depth and complexity that elevated the piece beyond what either could achieve alone. Catherine wiped away tears as father and daughter played. Together, their musical conversation reflecting years of shared experience and mutual understanding. When they finished, the silence felt full rather than empty. "That was beautiful," Catherine said. "Both the music and watching you two create it together." Emma improvised that harmony, Marcus said proudly. I've never played this piece for her before. I've been listening to you practice it in your office, Emma admitted with a grin. The walls aren't as soundproof as you think. But I didn't want to interrupt your creative process by letting you know I could hear it. Marcus laughed, remembering similar situations from Emma's childhood when she'd pretended not to notice his struggles while actually observing everything with remarkable perceptiveness. Since we're all here, Emma said, I have news to share. Dr. Peterson offered me a position as undergraduate research assistant starting this fall. I'd be working directly on the neuroplasticity studies while completing my pre-med requirements. That's fantastic, Catherine said. But are you sure you want to commit to such an intensive program so young? I've been thinking about it for months. This work isn't just what I want to do, it's who I am. I understand that most 15-year-olds are focused on different things, but I've never felt like a typical teenager. Marcus studied his daughter's face, seeing determination mixed with the vulnerability she rarely showed. What about the Beijing exchange program? You mentioned wanting to participate in that research. I asked Dr. Peterson about incorporating international experience into my undergraduate program. Northwestern has partnerships with several Chinese universities that could allow me to spend a semester abroad as part of my studies. The conversation was interrupted by Marcus's phone ringing. Dr. Sarah Kim's name appeared on the screen. I'm sorry to interrupt your evening, Sarah said when Marcus answered. But we have a situation in the pediatric ICU. A 7-year-old car accident victim isn't responding to standard interventions, and the family specifically requested music therapy. Dr. Torres asked if you could come in. Marcus felt the familiar surge of purpose that came with emergency calls. Despite his administrative responsibilities, he maintained active involvement in patient care, finding it essential for staying connected to the work's real impact. I'll be right there, he said, then looked at Emma and Catherine. Would you like to observe? With family permission, of course. Emma's eyes lit up. Really? I've read about acute intervention protocols, but I've never seen one implemented. They made their way to the pediatric ICU. Marcus reflected on how dramatically his life had changed. 5 years ago, he'd been a desperate single father playing piano in a hotel lobby to cope with anxiety. Now he was leading a team of researchers and clinicians who were literally rewriting medical textbooks. But the core remained the same: music as a bridge between suffering and healing, reaching patients and families in moments when traditional medicine reached its limits. Tyler's legacy lived on, not just in the center that bore his name, but in every child whose life was touched by the power of melody and hope. 10 years after that midnight encounter in the Grandview Hotel lobby, stood once again at a piano in the same space where everything had begun. The hotel had invited him back to perform at their annual charity gala, and the symbolism wasn't lost on anyone present, especially Emma, who sat in the front row wearing her medical school graduation cap and gown. The lobby looked exactly as it had that desperate night when he'd been a frightened single father facing an uncertain future. But everything else had transformed beyond recognition. Dr. Marcus Williams was now recognized internationally as the pioneer of evidence-based music therapy, his research cited in medical journals worldwide. The Tyler Brennan Center had spawned similar programs in 43 countries, training thousands of music therapists who were changing lives across 6 continents. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus said to the assembled crowd of donors, medical professionals, and foundation supporters 10 years ago.
I sat at this very piano as a desperate man hoping for any opportunity to build a stable life for my daughter.
I played because I couldn't sleep, because music was the only language that made sense when words failed me. He began playing the same improvised melody that had emerged that night, the one Catherine had recognized, the one Tyler had hummed. During his final days, the audience fell silent, understanding they were witnessing something profoundly personal. I had no idea that a woman named Catherine Brennan was listening from across this lobby, or that my music was somehow connected to her grandson Tyler, who had died 3 years earlier at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. I certainly never imagined that this moment of vulnerability would become the foundation for work that now serves over 50,000 children annually. Emma dabbed at her eyes, remembering fragments of that night from her 8-year-old perspective. She graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern's accelerated medical program at 19, completed her residency in pediatric neurology, and was now Dr. Emma Williams, MD, Ph.D., the youngest person ever appointed to the faculty of the Tyler Brennan Center. But the most extraordinary transformation, Marcus continued, his fingers finding new harmonies within the familiar melody, has been watching my daughter evolve from a curious child who hummed along with my playing into a brilliant physician-scientist, who's pushing our understanding of music therapy far beyond what I ever thought possible. The melodies shifted as Emma joined him on stage, carrying a violin she'd played throughout her teenage years. Without sheet music, she began weaving counter-melodies that elevated the simple piano line into something symphonic. Father and daughter had performed together countless times, but never in the space where their journey had truly begun. Dr. Emma Williams published her first research paper at 16, Marcus said, continuing to play while Emma's violin soared above his accompaniment. By 21, her work on music-induced neuroplasticity in premature infants had revolutionized neonatal intensive care protocols worldwide. She's exceeded every dream I had for her while pursuing dreams I never knew were possible. The audience was transfixed by the musical conversation between father and daughter, hearing not just technical proficiency, but the deep emotional connection that had sustained them through years of challenge and growth. Their improvised duet told the story of their shared journey without needing words. Tyler Brennan died at age 6, believing that music could heal the world, Marcus said as their improvisation drew toward its conclusion. He was right, but not in the way any of us initially understood. Music doesn't just comfort patients, it literally rewires damaged brains, reduces surgical complications, accelerates healing, and transforms the entire experience of medical care. Emma lowered her violin as Marcus played the final notes alone, bringing the melody full circle to where it had begun. The silence that followed was profound, filled with recognition of how far they'd all traveled. Catherine Brennan, now but still vibrant, stood to address the audience. When I first heard Marcus play 10 years ago, I thought I was listening to someone who understood Tyler's spirit. I now realize I was hearing the future of medicine itself, a future where healing addresses not just physical symptoms, but the whole human experience of illness and recovery. The evening raised over $2 million for the Foundation's global expansion initiatives. But the real milestone was symbolic, the recognition that music therapy had evolved from experimental treatment to essential medical practice. Later, as the crowd dispersed and hotel staff cleared the lobby, Marcus and Emma sat together at the piano bench where it all began. Emma had removed her graduation cap, her dark hair falling around her shoulders in a way that reminded Marcus of her 8-year-old self. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't played piano that night?" Emma asked. "I try not to think about alternate timelines," Marcus replied, "but I suspect we would have found our way to meaningful work eventually. We're both drawn to helping people. Music just happened to be our path. I don't think it was a coincidence. You taught me that music exists in the space between hearts, waiting for the right moment to create connection. That night, your heart was calling out for purpose. And Catherine's heart was still grieving for Tyler. The music you played became the bridge that connected your need with her vision." Marcus marveled at his daughter's insight. At 21, Emma possessed wisdom that combined scientific rigor with intuitive understanding of human experience. Her research had already earned international recognition, and major medical centers were competing to recruit her for faculty positions. "Have you decided about the offer from Johns Hopkins?" Marcus asked. "I'm staying at Northwestern," Emma said, without hesitation. Tyler's legacy belongs in Chicago, and there's still so much work to do here. The pediatric brain injury research we're launching next year could revolutionize treatment protocols worldwide. You don't have to stay because of me. Your career should follow your own aspirations, not family obligations." Emma smiled, the expression transforming her serious face. "Dad, I'm not staying because of you. I'm staying because this is where I can have the greatest impact." The Tyler Brennan Center has become the global headquarters for music therapy research. Why would I leave to start over somewhere else? Marcus felt a surge of pride mixed with amazement at the confident young woman. She'd grown up surrounded by medical research and artistic expression, developing into someone who could navigate both worlds with equal expertise. "There's something I need to tell you," Emma continued. "I've been working on a surprise project with Catherine and the Foundation Board. We're establishing the Marcus Williams Institute for Music Therapy Training within the center. It would focus specifically on training physician researchers who understand both the clinical and artistic aspects of the work." Marcus stared at his daughter, overwhelmed by the honor and the implications. "Emma, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll accept the position as founding director. We need someone who can bridge the gap between traditional medical education and innovative therapeutic approaches. Your background makes you uniquely qualified." The conversation was interrupted by Catherine approaching across the lobby, her footsteps echoing in the now quiet space. "I hope I'm not intruding, but I wanted to share something before we all go home." She carried a small wrapped package, which she handed to Marcus with ceremonial gravity. "This arrived yesterday from Beijing Children's Hospital. Dr. Lee wanted you to have it." Marcus unwrapped the package to reveal a wooden music box, intricately carved with Chinese characters and musical notes. When he opened it, a delicate melody began playing, a traditional Chinese lullaby that had been adapted for use in their pediatric music therapy program. "The inscription translates to 'Music heals across all cultures,'" Catherine explained. "Dr. Lee wanted to thank you for the collaboration that's now serving children throughout China." Marcus listened to the music box's gentle melody, thinking about the global network of healers who had emerged from Tyler's simple belief that music could comfort suffering children. The work had spread far beyond anything they'd originally envisioned, touching lives in ways they'd never know. "Tyler would be 36 now if he had lived," Catherine said softly. "Sometimes I imagine him as a grown man, maybe with children of his own, continuing to spread joy through music. But then I realize that's exactly what's happening through all of you. Through every child who's been helped by our programs, his spirit lives on." Emma stood and embraced Catherine warmly. "He does live on. Every time we see a child smile during treatment, every time a family finds comfort in music during their hardest moments, every time a medical student learns to see patients as whole human beings rather than just symptoms, Tyler is there." As they prepared to leave the hotel, Marcus took one last look at the piano where everything had begun. Tomorrow would bring new patients, new research challenges, new opportunities to expand the reach of music therapy. But tonight belonged to gratitude for the impossible journey that had brought them all together. "Thank you," Marcus said quietly to the empty lobby. Though he wasn't sure if he was addressing Tyler's memory, the universe's mysterious sense of timing, or simply the power of music itself to create meaning from chaos. Outside, Chicago's skyline glittered with promise. The Tyler Brennan Center's lights were visible among the downtown buildings, a beacon of hope for families facing medical crises around the world. Marcus and Emma walked toward their car, still humming the melodies they'd played together, carrying forward the legacy of a little boy who had believed that music could heal everything, and perhaps, Marcus thought as he listened to his daughter's voice blend with his own in harmony, Tyler had been absolutely right. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. To subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us,